There we go. Hello, and welcome to this kind of one-off random roundup highlight show for NAMM 2018, where 4 lovely, prolific people that put up with me talking in their direction and sometimes respond are going to school me on all things NAMM, because I didn't actually get to go. So we've got, let's run down the screen. Mr. Mylar Melodies, how are you?
Hi, I'm all right. I'm good. My sleeping patterns are getting back to normality, and I'm trying to make videos and get stuff done now that the NAMM is over, and escape without NAMM tracks or without breaking myself too brutally in front of the industry. Yeah, that can happen.
So, what videos have you got coming?
Well, from NAMM, not much. Although I did do, if you have a scoot, there is a video that I put up of me interviewing Sebastian from Arturia, talking about the new mini brutes.
Yes, I did watch that.
I'm pals with Sebastian. Yeah, and so it was just nice actually to pick his brains, because it's, people have watched videos with Sebastian but maybe don't know the guy. But he's, a young dude who's a product manager. He is designing the products, and he's also very much a user. He's a modular head. He has a system with a load of electron boxes, loads of other things, plus loads of Arturia gear. So he's just it's great to chat to him, and maybe it shows that a lot of the people who work there are all users just like us. But we had a good chat about the system, designing it. I had been privy to see some of the older versions of the Mini Brute too as it was developing, and it's quite interesting. There are a lot of changes that happen on projects like that throughout their lifetime, ultimately ending up with the thing we've just seen that's come out. So that, and then I'm doing a video on the Make Noise Tempi, which is good to do. It's been a real head scratcher, I have to say, like working out the manual and stuff and trying to learn the ins and outs. But it once you kind of grok all of the key pressing, the Streets of Rage, Street Fighter aspect of it, it's really powerful. So you'll see, we're going to have some fun with that.
Yeah, I quite look forward to the Mylar hands bashing out, Street Fighter special moves that change your division time or whatever you go for.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll keep going down the line. Kenneth, as it says, Flux of it 302. How's it going?
That's me. Yeah, so I've just got back from NAMM as well. So I'm actually in my jail cell right now. I was released for a work release, but now I'm back in. This is my temporary setup as I've just moved into a new house and I'm building a new studio outside of this room. So I kind of crammed in my essential gear into this room, and I'm still getting acclimated. If I were to pan the camera down, you would just see the floor is completely covered in wires right now. Still trying to figure that out, but it's cool. I've been posting up videos. I got we'll definitely talk about what my favorites were, so I won't cover that right now. But yeah, I tried to get coverage of mostly modular stuff and things that I thought were not really going to be covered by our friends over at like Sonic State. They had a whole team there, and they're great guys. So I wanted to let them kind of do their thing, and I would kind of focus on my little stuff.
I like that approach. It's Tom Synthanatomy was really cool like that. Super booth. He was, and to be fair, Ed and Nick at Sonic State. Let
me tell you, he was busting his butt. I every single time that I went to the media area to like just dump a flash card from my camera, or to really even to sit down. One of the beautiful things about going under a press badge, as opposed to if I was to just go under an artist badge or something like that, is you actually have a place to sit down when you're media. So I would kind of move back over to the media space, and he was always there editing video, uploading stuff. Like, he was grinding. So and he's a great guy too. So it was really nice to hang out with him for a while and talk to him.
Yeah, man, that super booth again. Ed and Nick at Sonic State as well. Everyone was obviously sharing experiences, who's been good on camera, what equipment have people got, all that kind of stuff, but also not kind of treading on each other's toes as well. I know Tom was like, well, I've seen you covering that, so I'm going to go do this. And, obviously we're all going to cover the same kind of major products at any event, but it's really cool kind of vibe about it with everyone.
Yeah, and the other thing is that it's so there's a little bit of a competitive vibe, but that's not really, it's not competitive in any kind of malicious way. It's just like, oh, like, you know, I want to go get this or I want to go get that. And then, you know, everybody's just really happy to be there and happy to be involved in what we're doing. And everybody's excited about it. Everybody's genuinely enthused by the gear that we're seeing and that sort of thing. So I was, yeah, every year that I go to NAMM, it's like, I know there's a lot of guys who become cynical about it and a lot of guys who are just jaded about the whole experience, just because they've been doing it for 20 years or whatever. And they just, you know, they don't care to do it. To me, it's a shot in the arm every year. Every year that I go, it invigorates me and reminds me of just like how our community is and how we can just, you know, you go there and you start talking to people and you find out about different things and how things are going in their part of the world and that sort of thing. And it just makes me so happy and so excited. So,
yeah. Tom is actually in the chat room, Synthanatomy. So, hi, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
The only competition I think there ever seems to be is whose first video. And it was Sonic State until Analog Zone jumped on the scene and seemed to have a video online the minute I've ever walked into any event.
Well, this year I stopped doing that. This year I told myself before I even went, I was like, well, that's realistically for me, NAMM media is really not my focus at all. My focus is I have meetings that I'm going to. There's people that I want to talk to, connections that I'm trying to get for sound design work, that sort of thing. But this year I went and I said, you know what? I'm not going to focus on getting my videos up first because every year I end up pulling my hair out because the Wi-Fi is not working or this is going slow or that's going slow. And I stress myself out. So this year I said, you know what? I'm just going to do interviews my way and put them up on my schedule. And then people will see that my content is a little bit different than other people's content. It'll be fine. I don't need the scoop on everything, you know?
Mm. Yes, thinking of scoop and what's just come up in the chat room. One of a couple of revisions of that wasn't.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have one on the way.
I'll bring that up later.
I have one on the way, so I'm excited.
Yeah, cool. Corey, how's it going?
Yo, what's up, man? How's everybody doing?
Good. We've not spoken for a long time since.
Yeah, man, it's been a while.
I think I was on your show last months back.
Yeah.
How was NAMM for you?
NAMM was dope, man. It's always good. You know, you can spoke on something that, like I always say about NAMM is, listen, the big boys at NAMM are people like Sonic State. They come through with a crew, they divide the place up, and they attack it like a wild beast. You know what I mean? And they're uploading stuff before your day is over. They've already uploaded 20 videos. So I learned very early on in going to NAMM, it is not about competing with anybody to get videos up. It's really about like my perspective, right? So that's why I started getting more into videos and kind of interviewing with the demo, right? So that's what was cool about it this year. I gotta say, there wasn't a whole lot to be super excited about at NAMM, but the things that I was excited about, I was really excited about, and they were worth the whole bit. So I can't say they're worth the whole trip because I'm really just like, you know, a commute away from Anaheim. But I can empathize with those that are trying to get their sleep schedule back together after NAMM, because literally the day after NAMM ended, I had a business trip to go on, and I just got back like yesterday. So okay. I'm still trying to get myself kind of balanced a little bit. But yeah, NAMM was good, man. It's like the ultimate band camp. You get to hook up with all your friends that you haven't seen all year. And that's the caboose that keeps my year running. You know what I mean? Those little stops that you do, NAMM, NobCon, MoldFest, those kind of things. And that kind of keeps my year running, just kind of catching up with folks.
Yeah, cool. We'll come on to kind of personal favorites and things in a minute. Last but by no means least, Mr. Chris, learning Modular. How are you?
Pretty good. Still on my way home from NAMM. I haven't made it back yet, but I'm supposed to drive home tomorrow finally. So I've been on the road. This has been my Modular for the last 2 weeks, including one of my NAMM picks, the 512 sequencer.
You walked to NAMM, right? That's why you're not.
Yeah, that's why it's taking so long. It was like a Aboriginal walkabout I went on, and I'll be back in Albuquerque tomorrow, and I'm going to catch up with Jim Coker 512 and Student Tie Guy Wednesday and pick up Student Tie Guy's new envelope generator. And I'm going to focus on getting my NAMM updates on the Learning Modular site slowly. Like the rest of you guys, I said, I'm not going to go back from the show and kill myself every night in the hotel, uploading everything I saw today. Yeah. So instead, I just did some summaries for my Patreon followers and for the mail list. And then, like, I went to the Old Men and MIDI dinner one night, and one night Tom Wise from Synth Anatomy and Simone from Frap Tools came over. Simone made us spaghetti bolognese in our hotel room, and just chilled and did stuff like that. It was the most relaxed NAMM I've had.
Well, for someone that didn't go, and to be honest, hasn't digested that much content yet, I'm looking forward to you guys rolling content out that isn't 500 videos on day one. I just
uploaded a video today.
I haven't seen it yet. I will watch it. But for me, my viewing tends to be, I upload, I hit subscriptions on YouTube and I'll tab open a few things, and I'm usually about a week behind, but roughly keeping up with whatever I'm subscribed to. NAMM comes along, just floods everything. I miss anyone else's videos but anything at NAMM for a sea of NAMM thumbnails down my YouTube browser. So I appreciate the kind of slower rolling content as well, because there's no doubt going to be some I miss when I go through the big bulk of stuff that's already out there.
Well, I think we all miss stuff, especially when we go there. I mean, there's so many videos that I watch of everybody else's stuff because I'm like, oh man, I didn't really get to spend time with that, or I didn't even see that. And honestly, NAMM could be like 3 weeks long and you still wouldn't see everything. It's huge.
Well, see, that's the other thing too, because by the third day or so, I almost give up on it. Like, if I didn't see it by now, I might not get to see it. It's gonna be a wrap for me. You know what I mean? Like, because it doesn't matter how. I think I had the most comfortable shoes on this year that I've ever had on at NAMM, and by day 3, I was still just like done. I want to go get this video, but I think I'm gonna have to miss it. I'll have to email that guy.
This was a weird year for me in NAMM because the first day I just went in and I was deafened by a demo in the first half hour. I'm talking to somebody over here, and someone's speaker here says like piercing frequencies. Like, okay, I'm half hour in, and I've lost my hearing. This is going to be a great show. And I then just gained energy as the show went on. And by the 4th day, I'm like, yeah, let's go do this. Everyone's like, we're dead. What are you talking about? But it was fun to slow down because I had a chance to talk to a lot of people on an engineering level and say, well, what's the design decisions that went into this? What are you using inside? And what are the chips and stuff like that? So I look forward to writing all that up in the next few weeks, getting that online.
Yeah. So first thing, because an interesting point that came up, I don't know if you were there last year, Chris, but
yes.
Mylar, Ken, and Carl, you were. So all of you were there last year, as far as I know. Was it a lot smaller this year? There seemed to be a few comments of, there were several modular guys missing.
I thought it was going to be a lot smaller. It was a little bit smaller this year.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Not much.
But it was more consolidated, though. Yeah, the show got bigger. They added a new hall on and things like that. But actually, if anything, the modular people were more closely packed together, which made that part of life easier.
It kind of reminded me of 2 years ago. Like about 2 years ago, the modular community was really kind of compact together. There was a couple of people that had gotten thrown out. I think Harvest Man was like off in some weird corner that I never found and that kind of thing. But for the most part, what was different was there were some larger companies that weren't there, and Moog, DSI, Behringer. So there were some larger companies that didn't show, but on top of that, there were some larger companies that didn't really show much, that didn't show much of anything interesting and new. Like Roland really didn't come to play. Like nothing that, nothing that inspired me, at least. I don't know about you guys, but but I mean, every year Roland is kind of one of those things where it's like hit or miss. They tend to release interesting things in the summer as opposed to for NAMM, which is
the end of the summer, because that's what they do, their 808 and 909 days, right? So it kind of works for them. But you know what I noticed about NAMM that was going on this year is the not NAMM. You know what I mean? The NAMM that happened outside of NAMM.
Yeah, there's that was bigger this year.
Yeah, super big this year. I mean, so I'm local to LA. A week before NAMM came, Moog was in town at the Cactus House. There's like a cactus plant house or something. Remember they did the cactus garden or the modular garden or something like that a couple years ago?
Yeah, so, 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so the company that helped them is called a Cactus Store or something, I don't know. But they're in Echo Park, LA. And so apparently they have a good relationship with them. So what they did is that they had like workshops and stuff at the Cactus store and a house next door to it. I don't know if that's the owner's house or whatever, but it was just kind of, it turned into Modular Garden Part 2 for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And it was dope. I mean, I went there the first night and it was cool to see the D-Fam, but you know, that was one of the things I asked them about, like, yo, why y'all not going to be at NAMM? And they were like, hey, this is better for us to really get grassroots and touch the people, talk to the people, and have a more controlled environment where we can really reach out and get familiar and introduce people to the product in a more familiar way. And I think what was cool about that is that they got a lot of videos of people, like, you know, what normally they would have somebody come to the Moog studio and film them in the Moog studio. With this time, it was just all these people in LA and down the coast that came down to this house and they filmed a ton of that stuff. And then, you know, so you had a lot of stuff like that. I got hit up by Rolly, who said, we got the Rolly house. You want to come by and see the new Rolly stuff? I got hit up by Teenage Engineering, who was in a band somewhere outside, like Creepy Kidnapper Guys or something. So it was interesting. The Not NAMM was very interesting this year.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I think the whole thing must just become so much more purposeful. You have to step outside to go see the Moog stuff. So from the user point, there's an intent there already. And then for them, yeah, they can demo things properly. They can actually talk to you. No one can, like Chris, just deafen you at the side of the stand without them having to buy up extra stand space just to get room and try and cut noise back, I guess. Yeah, well, that's good. It wasn't any smaller particularly. There seemed to just be a bit more of a kind of cry around Christmas of, no, I'm not going to NAMM. What's the point? From several of the Modular guys, at least. It's good it wasn't dented too much. Well, we'll run down the line. We'll start your end, Chris. Highlight, a hard question maybe, but personal highlight in terms of gear.
If I had to pick only one, it was actually the Strymon Magneto. That was the one that I spent the most time at their pod playing with and having fun with. Now, mind you, the first 5 minutes were spent repatching it because both Strymon and Eventide, even though they had Mother 32s and modules and everything, they were all patched wrong with stupid shit wired up. And I had to repatch things actually to get a demo out of it. But then I had fun jamming with it for quite a long time. And I know there's been a lot of debate about it already. Oh, it's big. Oh, it's expensive. Oh, I'm sure it's not cool. I used to own an old WEM copycat tape echo with an open exposed tape loop. I have no fond memories of using that but this was a fun thing to recreate this. And I had a lot of fun with the Strymon Magneto. So if I had to pick one, that's the one I spent the most time demoing with. But there was a good half dozen or so modules. I said, yeah, I'm going to spend more time with those.
Yeah, the WEM, depending on which one it was, the copycat, there was no rate control on the lower model, if I remember right.
You drag your finger on it.
Yeah. Yeah, like holding the center of the spindle on a turntable.
And mine was modified to move the head around on the back side of the loop. So I had one long delay and 2 short delays on it.
Okay. But yeah, there's not a lot of fun to be had. What about anyone else for Magneto?
Radical Delta Set A was mind-blowing.
We'll come to that. Let's do Magneto first. I'll come to that next, Ken.
That's all I want to talk about.
So I dug Magneto.
No, the Magneto, one of the things that I noticed about it was the way that they had it set up for demoing. They set up like a couple of stations with, what was it, the DFAM and Mother 32. And it was the thing that you noticed about every single person that was coming by that booth that was playing with it is everybody was getting something cool out of it instantly. Like, it wasn't like sometimes you go to booths and you see people's faces are just lost in the modular, and because for one, being at NAMM, it's very hectic. So when you come up to these modular systems, a lot of times the patches, you know, people are spending time trying to get something out of it that's cool, and then they get frustrated and walk away. I wasn't seeing any of that there. It was these small 3U systems, and people were just getting something cool, and you were seeing everybody like looking at their friends like, oh, you got to hear this, you got to hear this, and just sharing headphones and going crazy about it. So
yeah, it was like high on the instant gratification side of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did the same thing actually. I went over to the thing and was trying to work it out. Spent some time like unpatching exactly as you said, where it's you know, someone had patched some craziness. But I got the thing going. I think I had a patch where it was just, I can't remember if, I think it was just square wave to wet dry. So it was just absolute nothing. And then just this crazy high pitched sort of, you know, choir of angels thing that just blasted in. And it was such an incredible loop that I had going. I remember like sort of looking up and looking down the sort of corridor, hoping to see someone that I knew so that I could go, please listen to this. And I did that like, you know, smug self-serving thing when you put the headphones down, you go, you know, when someone picks that up, they can be really impressed. That thing that last person had come up with. I was like, it does sound really
I do that all the time.
Yeah, normally when I play something in NAMM, I don't want anyone to hear what shit I'm up to. I want to do it by myself. But I'm like, put headphones on, listen to this, man, because I had the mod wheel on the key step hooked up to the feedback, so I could do a runaway and pull it back and stuff like that. And it was fun to play with.
It was very fun to play with.
So there's no. I don't know if I'm just being overly pessimistic. I agree with everything that's said. It's not a negative view, but the things I wanted when this was first announced as the Generalissimo last year,
Yeah,
and I spoke to them about it back then, and they kind of said, "Yeah, it's not happening, but we are still working on things." And I have no connection with Strymon. They didn't tell me any more than that. Just a kind of blind email to a contact form on their site. There's no CV over like tape age and crinkle and wow and flutter, and those things on the Big Sky pedal that has the magneto mode in it are amazing when you start doing it. I mean, you've got to do it with your hands on the pedal. Obviously, that doesn't have a load of CV in either. But is that
you could CV the speed though, couldn't you? You could give it a bit of a wobble.
Yeah, but like the crinkle and the kind of model tape age on the on magneto mode on the Big Sky is really cool. And when you do that with the kind of lo-fi knob on, say, the ZVEX lo-fi junkie, that's really nice.
Well, you've got knobs on it to do it, and they responded really well. But no, they don't have CVs, unfortunately.
But I mean, there's enough going on.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
So
I'll tell you one thing: the thing just sounds glorious, though.
So can I be that guy that's currently in a jail cell looking area that says the thing that upsets me is like, I don't know if I want to spend that kind of money on a delay, because I do a lot of sound design stuff, and oftentimes delay is not a primary thing that I want in my sound design, because a lot of the times they want things that aren't tempo synced and or tempo dependent in that way that delays tend to
You're making sample fodder and food for someone to put in.
So yeah, and because of that means for me, the magneto would literally have to come out of my play money, right? Which means like it's not a money maker for me, which means it's expensive. It's not cheap.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Listen, I want people to be paid well. Like I get that, but for me, it's like, well, I would probably tie in a lo-fi junkie with another analog delay and probably be happy. But that thing is for the people that are better off than I am. Then it's awesome.
Yeah, for what you're doing, it makes sense not to go after it. If you're doing music though, particularly stuff that's very rhythmic, sequence, stuff like that, it's glorious. And yeah, the lo-fi junkie is very cool. This is on a different level. You know how some people say buy one really good reverb? This is in that category.
Yes.
Yeah. So is this, I know the mode very well in terms of the original magneto code. I've had a Big Sky for a while. In a similar way that, say, the Morphogene for modular users or Clouds or the Echophon, they all have a tone and a sound. And you can kind of tell when someone's used one of those things. That whether that's good or bad is for another conversation. Will people start to sound like they're just using the magneto, do we think?
I definitely think it has a sound.
Go ahead.
No, I think it definitely has a sound. And I think it's pretty distinctive. You know what I mean? Once you start using some of the tricks and stuff in there, I think people might use that in a way where, you know, there may be a handful of tricks that everybody learns, and then you're going to be able to tell, like, yeah, that's magneto. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like when Elements or Rings first came out, and it's just you can spot it a mile off. Now, is that just because of lazy patching, which I'll be guilty of as well? I'm not judging people's use of modules. That, like you said, they'll learn 2 or 3 tricks that are really cool and maybe new to the format, or does it have some sort of tonal imprint as well, do we think?
For me, it was a lack of tonal imprint that made me excited about it. Because I've been to so many things like, that has a distinctive honk, that has a distinctive resonance, that has a distinctive low-end roll-off. This was wide open. Now, there's certain tricks like the tape crinkle is a perfect example of Corey's talking about. You know, you hear that effect, you're going to hear it in 100 places now because it's so cool and it does it so well. But it was a more high-fidelity product than I was expecting it to be.
That's true.
The pedal, the Big Sky's the same for me. I love the Eventide space. I love the Big Sky. And it's always really, they come up, you know, as two big daddy of the reverb pedal world. The Big Sky for me, though, is just super clear and transparent. You just seem to play through it. Whereas the space is made, especially for synths, the space is just gorgeous, thick, lovely reverb. And it can obviously be shaped, but the Big Sky, I think, is just crystal clear. It's good to know that that's like this. Yeah. Did anyone look at current draw? Because I think people seem to say, why haven't they just made a Big Sky in modular? But there's like 500 milliamps pull aside on a Big Sky pedal. So that's probably why they haven't put it in the modular system. It's like half of a standard power supply.
It'll have to come with a power supply, will it? Huh?
Yeah, like the Rolands.
Yeah. Apparently, that was lazy use of leftover processors. Should one particular modular builder that's vocal about such things to be believed? I'll let people find that thread. But yeah, Magneto seemed to be the one. That seemed to be the big hitter from everything that I saw with the kind of modular world.
You know what I thought was interesting about Magneto, and this is less about the sound than I guess it is more about the whole NAMM situation. I think that what they should have done, knowing this was their first modular offering, they should have partnered with somebody in the modular space upstairs and maybe had it in there, because, you know, I spent a lot of time around the modular area. Then there was at one point I stopped. I was like, wait a minute, where's Magneto?
About yeah,
right.
Corey and I had a conversation, and we were like, dude, it's all the way on the other side.
No, I ran myself to death.
A mile to find it.
I looked like an idiot over there by the guitars and stuff, like looking at my phone trying to find out exactly where it was. And when I found it, I just stood around. I was like, "What's it doing down here and way over here?" It's like in a closet.
Literally the furthest away it could have been for the modular area.
Yeah, really.
It really was. And not only that, not only was it far away, but it was like, so it's their pedals in that booth, and then it was kind of like it was to the front, but it was like off to the side a little bit too.
Yeah, off to the side.
The whole situation just like, it kind of irritated me. Like, I don't know. It just irritated me how I was like, man, you guys should bring this over. Just like I almost felt like the modular area had its setup, and that's mostly because of Dark Place and what's the
WMD as well.
And you know, the way that they
Alex
kind of pulled together their resources to get their booths all together, it would have been very smart from these other manufacturers if they had said, oh, hey, you know, we'll help out if you just let us put a module in one of your cases.
Yeah, that would have been
really made everybody happy, because it would have given more press and all. That's where the smaller module community tends to do really well in. Yes, there's competition, but everybody's friendly and they're all helping each other in different ways. Arturia went out to other manufacturers and said, hey, do you mind if we borrow some modules and put some modules in the rack brute, which is, you know, it attaches to the mini brute too. So that kind of helped give those guys some extra press from maybe some of the more general music tech publications. So that's nice, but it'd be nice to throw it back the other way too and bring some of that press into the modular space, you know?
Yeah, effectively said, we've got someone that will guide you through this with synth downstairs, go check it out, and they put one of the two skiffs downstairs with someone else. But I have heard instances of, you know, people doing that where they're maybe not at NAMM, or they say, you know, put my filter, put my wave folder in your rack or whatever, you know, as friends, and then said person, you know, company A that has company B's, I don't know, filter in their rack, and actually company A kind of chucks them under the boat and says, no, that stuff's good, but my filter does this. And I've known companies that are quite friendly publicly having done that to each other.
I don't like that.
Which is obviously a real crappy move, but
yeah, it is. Around my way, that'll get
a whooping.
That'll get your ass whipped. That's synth on these streets.
But I'd agree though. It would have been nice to see, well, what you guys would have done with it. You know, some modular users use this thing as well. They like Katuria though. I had a lot of good videos. You know, videos with a designer, really well shot, all that kind of stuff. They swerved NAMM with. Obviously, they were there, but this was hit just before, wasn't it?
Yeah, so they hit just before, and we're even getting comments in here. What's the point of the rack brute? And so, luckily and fortunately, as well, you know, as the other brutes, I was involved on the Matrix or Mini Brute 2 project and the rack brutes, and I've been seeing a lot of weird hate towards it, and like just. Not even just hate, but just snide remarks about certain things that you wouldn't see if it was maybe a smaller company, such as like, oh, the bus board is mounted how I don't like it or something. And I'm like, well, move the bus board. And irregardless of that, you could still reach everything. You know, you haven't touched it. But people were asking, what's the point of it? And I'm thinking, you know, for somebody who hasn't gotten into modular, this is like a perfect entryway. You know, you have a case, power. It connects to a semi-modular synthesizer where everything just works. You don't have to, the learning curve is extremely low with it. You could just buy some modules, buy this setup, and you're good to go. And I guess I can kind of.
You know, Ken, that was something I was surprised at in NAMM in general, because I really thought after the Mother being out and the No Coast being out for so long, who would dare make another semi-modular tabletop synth, or even one to go to your rack? But there were several of them at the show, and I just made me.
There was quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, made me realize, my God, this thing's still growing. I thought we were pretty close to peak modular, but it's still growing. I still see on Facebook, I just got a Mother. I just got my first modules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was
it's an easy ramp into Euro rack. I mean, so for me and of Ken, you know, we do hip hop and boom bap and stuff, and there's a rash of hip hop producers that are starting to, you know, their interest is being piqued. But at the same time, a lot of these guys don't necessarily want to dive head in. Right. So it seems to be like a nice space to dive into. And I think that some of these companies are starting to recognize it. Like, you know, at one point when companies are coming up, they're like, everybody has to have their filter. Everybody has to have their voice, their VCO, this thing and that thing. Now it's like everybody has to have a tabletop or some sort of converted semi-modular situation.
I was definitely guilty of that. I think it was a rendered image and not a real one that went up with a bus board. And it was actually Mylar Melodies, knowing that he touched one, kind of got on text to him. How are you even going to mount anything in that bottom row? I was definitely guilty of diving into that activity.
And to address that,
it was a render, so it's not how the bus board is actually in the final product.
And even with that being said, it's only 2 rows. It's like you literally, even if it was all the way at the top, which I moved mine just to try it out, just to see, oh, is it really as bad as people are freaking out about? And you could still easily get to the bottom of that bus board. So
that's the kind of point in it that for me, you know, Mylar says to me, yeah, it's fine. I've tried it. You've nothing to worry about. And it's like, all right, case closed. I'll shut my mouth.
Well, the point we're all missing here is they put out a render, people squawked, and they changed it. Yeah. That shows that they are actually listening.
Yeah.
And on top of that, though, the other things that I was just trying to point out is that, you know, the kind of point of it is Arturia, from everything that I'm aware of, has no intentions of making Eurorack modules. They feel like the market is too niche to really make a profit in that space. But what they are trying to do is they recognize that people are in that space and they want to assist in that. They were really, if you really think back, the Mini Brute was the resurgence of analog synthesizers in the larger platform. Before that, that then came the MS-20 Mini. After that was, all that stuff came after the Mini Brute, and that was a kind of a big deal. And it had CV on it. Yeah, and the price point was crazy. So, I don't want to sound like fanboyish about it, but what I'm saying is that, people should recognize that, hey, it's coming in at a nice space. It's also not priced so low that it's hurting other people is the other thing. Like, I don't see it. It's not like, I mean, if you add the Mini Brute 2 and the Rack Brute together, you're still looking at a decent enough chunk of change to where it's not cutting out the little guy, you know?
Yeah. I think the point with it is with Arturia, as you've all varying experiences with them, that these guys use modular and are into modular. And I know you had Glenn Darcy on the show of yours, Ken, a while ago, who was holding up prototype drum voices and all sorts of things that they'd made in Euro format to test the drum route before it was coming out. And they worked with Mickey Delp of Delptronics as well on some of the drum sounds. So they seem, I have no experience with any of the new Arturia stuff other than just seeing it online, but they seem like such an incredibly kind of supportive, interested, keen, users of equipment as a company. That I don't really get the negativity. Maybe people aren't as aware of that, but yeah, they seem like they all, like Electron, they seem like they just love it. They eat, live, breathe this stuff. They're keen to support what's going on. Yeah. The only thing I can see as a downside, and I don't know if anyone's touched on this, that with the stand on the rack brute, it looks like it would push it quite far forward on a desk.
That's my number one gripe about the whole thing. So when I first got, and I have to kind of clarify that my units are prototypes, so they are a little bit different from the final version, and I get yelled at if I try to present it as a final version.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, that was one of my main gripes, is that, and I'll angle this down so you can kind of see it. So can you see this back bar here? Hold on,
can't quite see the bar, but
right. And that back bar is pretty far out. It actually makes it just slightly deeper than a matrix brute, which, you know, sitting on a desk, that's a lot of space, right? But it does also make it super stable, and it makes it comfortable to carry. When I take this thing to go, like, I can literally just close it up like so, and I can grab it by the handle and I can roll, which is pretty cool, because currently I've got a 3-year-old upstairs. And
like with that, with the stand thing.
Yeah, so I tend to bring it around with me. Like, I tend to put modules that I'm testing in it. Like, I have some prototypes in the case right now. So when I'm testing it, sometimes I want to take it upstairs and just kind of fiddle with certain tests, and I can do that. The other thing was that the jacks are not panel mounted. And that was like instantly, as soon as I opened the box and pulled it out, I said, jacks aren't panel mounted. I better go yell at them. And so I yelled at them, and at first they were resistant. At first they said, oh, you know, no, don't worry about it. It should be fine. And I said, no, that's not fine. You will have problems with this. And they did some testing, and they found some problems with that. And they did change the jack panel on there to be a lot more robust than the original prototypes were. They are still not panel mounted, but they are screwable. If you were to get your own thin screws, you could fit a couple threads on there to do that if you really wanted to, but they actually bolstered underneath of it pretty substantially. And at NAMM, I got my chance to play with the production model, and it is very, very sturdy. So because that was my number one concern. I was like, man, people are going to break jacks if you don't do that. But they actually bolstered it up pretty substantially. So I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah, there's some ADAC modules that don't do that. I'm not sure what the board is and what the back of the actual units are, but they're not screwed on and kind of panel mounted. And they're fine for the most part, certainly the ones I have. So go on then, Ken, seeing as you've spilled the beans, as it were, your favorite from now.
Yeah. So and Corey can chime in on this as well, because he joined me with my joy. Radical Technologies Delta 7A was jaw-droppingly good, and I say that in the literal sense of the word. I mean, everybody that I like, every time I heard it, I grabbed somebody and I said, you got to come over here and hear this. And I had George over there.
Ken literally had a tribe of us following him over to that booth.
I just
was like, come with me. Come with me.
My brain was breaking at how good. And, you know, to be fair, every year that I see him over at the Radical booth, he always makes me like smile, and I always enjoy his products. I think Radical has some really great products, but man, this thing sounds so good. I gotta have it. Like, I don't care what I gotta do, I gotta have it. It's the oscillator sounds fantastic. the filters, it's got both digital and analog filters in it, and
That
the
filter sounds incredible.
The delay just sounded ridiculous, and I know that you would think, oh, it's just a delay. It's in a semi-modular module like that. Man, the whole thing is just, it sounds fantastic. Like, that's just the only way I can put it. Just that.
And you know, when you crank up the feedback all the way, you would expect, you know, some crap that started happening. I mean, everything about it was pleasant. You know what I mean? It was just a pleasant experience. Everything about that. What is it? Delta Sep A?
Yeah. And he was doing this demo where he would kind of like play it up a little bit, and then he'd start, like, the delay times would be long, and then he would sweep them down and bring the feedback of the delay up, and then hit a low note, and just the whole thing would shake your face, and just everybody's jaw would drop instantly. It was so, oh man, it felt so good. It just felt so good.
Yes, sir. It was great.
First thing that came to mind, and people should listen to this album if they haven't, when you said it would shake your face,
Yes.
Split the Atom cover from Noisier. I just imagine you and your tribe just getting.
That's us.
I brought my friend Glenn, which, you know, Chris knows Glenn quite well as well, and I brought him by, and I said, man, he asked me, he said, what do you want to show me here? And I brought him straight to that thing. I said, you got to hear this thing. I mean, it is phenomenal. And as soon as he did that test where he dropped he opened up the swarm, and then he dropped the delay rate and brought up the feedback, everybody just looked at each other like, oh, that's that sound.
So what tonal ballpark is it in? You know what?
Oh man, it's huge.
What mix and concoction of flavors of synth?
That's the best way. Corey, you agree? Yeah. Huge. That's huge. The best way to describe it.
So, I mean, it does have parts of the swarm oscillator in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
now, is that kind of Roland JP 8000-ish kind of thing?
More like cloud generator.
Yeah, I mean, I get the swarm thing, but there's sometimes a little kind of weedy and 90s trance, like the kind of swarm of saws.
So Ben, you know how like on a Moog oscillator, you know how like the square wave, when you go really low, it has like this fat bottom end that not all square oscillators have. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It has that thickness, but it has that across the whole spectrum. Like, and so when you start to detune it and spread the swarm on it like that, it just, man, like, I just want to play with it in a mix because I think it'll just dominate a mix. But it just sounded so full, so rich, like all the way across the frequency spectrum, that it just made me grin ear to ear every time I touched it.
He was at they were at Synthfest in October, actually, and one thing that stood out was I heard him jamming on his gear and just said, you know, let's just get a stereo recording of this. Like, this is amazing. And he seemed to have a couple of performances in his pocket, either built around sequences in the case or a keyboard or a bit of both, and was just kind of primed and ready to go with good patches, good playing, good sounds right off the bat. Because you can catch people off. It's almost like people are at a trade show and they forget they're at a trade show. When you ask for a demo and they're kind of like deer in headlights, even off camera. Again, that's just the range of different people that build this thing. Again, it's no particular judgment, but some, even without a camera in sight, it just seem like they just shouldn't be stood with their gear. He, the complete opposite end of the spectrum, was just like, yeah, what do you want to hear? Asked for a couple of things and he's off. And the kind of demo he gave me, what I had there, was amazing.
I think that's the weakness of a lot of.
He's actually going to be on my show too. He's sick right now. He did catch anthrax, which thankfully all of us, you know, we're not sick. But he got a little sick from NAMM, and once he gets better, he's going to come on my show, and I'm going to grill him in detail as to everything that's going on with that synth.
Yeah, nice.
What's the price point on that?
$999.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And is it going to come,
Chris?
is this going to come in a little case?
Yeah, he's got a version that it's a case kind of like how Mother 32 does, I guess. Yeah. So it does have a standalone case. I forget what he said the price point was at. I think it was 12. Yeah, I mean that. Oh man, I want one so bad. I haven't had lust for a module like that probably since maybe like the Evolution filter, because that was like the return of Dave Rossum, and that just made my day. Which that would be my secondary pick, by the way, was the simulator. But I'll let other people talk about that stuff.
What about you, Alex? Personal highlight gear-wise, have you got one? Has already been said.
What's that? Sorry, are you talking to me? No one else is answering. My connection is terrible. I'm in the most technologically advanced room with the worst internet connection. So
yeah, no worries.
Forgive me.
What was your personal highlight?
My highlight. I sort of, I was talking on. I was on that. Actually, Ken, you walked past us when I saw you when we were doing that Sonic State thing. Look at you with your. Like,
oh yeah.
It's become a superhero.
Oh yeah. You were doing the little.
Doing sort of, and basically, actually, what I didn't say in that is because there's two things. So, like for pure modular, and I'm going to slightly buck the trend. Like the thing that actually genuinely struck me the most was those little 2 HP drum modules.
They were
which sounds like that's a really boring thing to sort of say, because there's a lot of very new, there's the spherical wavetable navigator, which is an incredible product. I had a very quick go with that. But I think that those little drum modules kicked ass, because for me, my interest, especially, when you look at like the new mini brutes and the rack brutes, what I'm seeing on my route into modular is making groove boxes, making a thing that will make drums and make synth lines nice, make all the bits and bobs that you need to make a track just in one case. And I feel that when you have a modular that does that, there's a bit of a light bulb, and you kind of go, man, this thing's really fun. I'm making a whole tune on this. And a critical part of that is drums. So if you don't have, bass, kick, snare, well, kick drum, snare, hats in your case, then you can't really do that. So what's nice about those 2 HP ones is they are 2 HP each. So that in 6 HP, you've got a really wicked sounding, like a very 808 kick, which also has pitch modulation. So you can play it like a voice, like a sine wave voice, and it will track 1 volt per octave. And then a nice snare that I remember kind of morphed from a nice kind of snappy sort of 808 noise kind of 606 electro sort of, and then hats, which maybe it was the hats that they kind of I just thought they sounded great. There was a bit of drive to them. There was just the right type of modulation just to bring them to life. But it's pure from a pure functional standpoint. Like in such a small amount of space, you can now have what I would consider a kind of complete drum backline, as it were.
And they sounded full, and because I saw people saying, "Oh, well, do you mean just for the size?" Because I don't just go for the size. I think it might have even been Ben in a thread that was saying something like that, and I was like, "No, I totally agree. They sound really good, and I think they're digital, right?" And, but they sounded awesome. I was really,
at any size, they sounded like you put those through a big system, people would be like, you'd be hitting the brown note, basically. I thought they sounded awesome.
Really cool. And like you said, 6 HP, and you have a full modular drum rig. Like my modular drum rig is, 6U, 2 rows of 84, and I barely fit it all in there,
Well, what I'm thinking about is, like, you look at those rack brutes and you're like, well, if you were a person and you just got your mini brute 2S and you got the 3U rack brute, I mean, the good thing about those rack brutes is there's lots and lots of sockets. There's like 20 in the
30.
one row.
I think there might be 30.
20 or 30.
There's a lot. Yeah,
maybe
a lot. Way more than I needed.
But there's a lot. And so the point is, if you're, and 88 or 80. For whatever it is with the power module, that's not a crazy amount of space. And so what's nice is you can think folks who've just got that 1U have, in the smallest possible amount of space, now got the option of having some drums, so they've got a bit of room to put in some digital oscillators and more filters and effects.
So is it the sound that particularly made it for you? Because there was the 3 HP Pico drums from America for a while now. You could get 2 drum modules and 3 HP. But is it just
That
the
is
sound
true.
that killed it for you, or having the
Sound.
picture?
Honestly, like it was just the right side of 808, which for me, I'm just like, you know, I am an 808, and you rip me open, there's an 808 inside, and so it's
so we're gonna get you a T-shirt that says that 808 inside, like Intel.
808 sound. Yeah, so it was a bit of that. It was both the size and the sound. So it's just like, and so that's why I say, like, it's not a truly revolutionary thing. It's not like we don't have excellent 808 drums, you know, like the tip top drums. I love those, and those are analog. But it's like this holy triangle of size to price to the sound and to what it offers. To as a person getting into modular, it will allow you to build a groove box in the smallest possible space. And there's a lot of folks who just starting off and maybe only have a happy ending kit. So it matters that you can actually fit it in that much space, because it leaves you that much room to everything else.
The thing is about that range is they also have like the 2 HP freeze, and they got a delay. So they
have one of those as well. It's great.
If you fill that out,
didn't they have a sample
really modern sounding, funky ass drum patterns with their setup, you know?
Oh, he had the hooked up to the Euclidean modules as well. I was like, and that was also good doing it for me, because each one had a little Euclidean sequence. I was like, this is really good. Like,
I haven't really enjoyed it. I haven't posted yet.
Yeah, I would love to get it. I would love that stuff.
Yeah, you were right, Kenny. I did in our little kind of Facebook group chat with us just to set this chat up. I was like, is it just the size? And it wasn't that I don't believe 2 HP can make great sounds, but obviously that's just as valid in a lot of ways. If you've got 6U and that's all you've got starting out, or 3U, just one row, or you've got like a 12U live case similar to your setup, Alex, and you think, right, I need drums, sequencing, some hands-on controls, some effects, and I can physically only carry this case and a rucksack of cables or whatever. That is just as important, but you said then, and obviously have said now, that it isn't a compromise on sound either. It's not just the size.
I thought it sounded amazing. But I should also, just on the other drum kit, I have to mention, because it's the module that I've been playing with for most of the week and it's been blowing my tiny little mind, is the Moog DFAM. I think the Moog DFAM is just one of the most amazing things that I've tried in a long while. And I don't say that lightly. Like, I'm really impressed by that module for what it offers, for what it is, which is to say, it's a weird one, because I think a lot of folks they just have to get their hands on one, because you won't believe me until you try it. And then it's basically
so, like, you know what I think about the DFAM? I think the DFAM is fresh, but I think that people come to it with a preconceived notion of what it is, and you can't approach it that way. You cannot. There's no way you can approach the DFAM that way, because people say, "Oh, Moog released an analog drum machine." Stop, back up. Moog released a percussive, analog percussive synth.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that puts
like
things back in perspective.
Because it's not, the beauty is it's not just, it does amazing one shots. If you hit that trigger, it'll make these mental drum sounds that if you just record them into your sampler, you'd have an incredible kit. But it's when it's running and it's doing these like kick, then a snare, then a spang, then a hat, then a kick, then a snare. And it does this, it blends that line between bass and drums. It makes things that are both the rhythm and the melody at the same time. And it's just architecturally so wildly different to what most sort of subtractive synths are, and what perhaps Moog have been doing, and they have had a lot of the stuff based on the classic circuits, and it is too, but it's taking those classic circuits and just stirring them into a huge pot, and with this completely different signal flow. And I've been trying to recreate it on my modular, and I'm really struggling to do it, which is interesting. It's like, even with the same constituent parts, I'm trying to work out how they've done it. And I really want to pick Steve Dunnington's brains, because I think it's a real, like, a bit of it's schooled me a little bit about like modular, just designing an instrument, because it's parts that we all know, but when you play with it, you're like, why have I never patched this up? I've never patched this up before.
There's two things.
And there's something different about that analog, the analog sequencer in it too. That kind of gives it a little bit of life. Sort of the way they put that in there.
From what I can tell, and the way it is actually working, is that it is basically the velocity it's using basically there's 3 envelope generators, and the 3 envelope generators are each going through their own VCA, and what is happening is that velocity sequencer is controlling all 3 VCAs. So it's softening and hardening the envelope generators per step. So you're just getting this rhythm. So like the VCA, the filter, and I'm forgetting the other one, but all 3 of them are moving up and down in volume, and that dynamism, you know, you're then combining that with pitch and an FM, and you can obviously send, like, for example, when I went to the Moog house as well, I was chatting with Trent, you know, who's one of the sort of lead guys there. He patched up pitch to noise, which was a nice one as well. So you could get the snare to just come in on a single hit, and there's lots of clever little tricks. Especially like I really wanted to have loads of LFOs on hand to just modulate the decay time and stuff. But it just as a unit, as a product, it really has surprised me, because it just sounds stunningly good. I mean, my God.
I'll poo-poo it because I didn't get an invite to the house. The Moog house.
You should have just like jumped the fence. Pretty easy.
Well, no, I didn't to be fair, I didn't fully know about it until it was too late and I had other meetings. But the thing about the DFAM that had me kind of surprised, because I only had a couple of minutes with it, was I kind of thought, okay, well, this thing's fairly basic. Like, you know, it's not overly complex for what it is. And I thought, meh, like it didn't pique my interest or anything. But I did play with it over at the Magneto area, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. You know, like
that's the thing that happens.
I have similar modules that will do similar things, but the way that it does it, the way that it's voiced is its own thing, and it's actually pretty cool. So it kind of made me I ate a little bit of crow on it, because I was really not interested in it from just looking at it on an overview. But when I actually got my hands on it, I was actually pleasantly surprised with it.
Yeah, and back in Ben's pessimistic corner over here, I was the same. You guys are just calling me out for all the pessimism I've been spitting in your direction.
Well, I shared that with you, though. I mean, I felt the exact same way that you do, and I still, to be perfectly honest with you, I still don't know that I would necessarily buy it unless Moog wants to send one to me and I can check it out and say, okay, now I get it when it's in my own setup. But I did enjoy it. I think if I didn't have a robust drum modular synthesizer area in my studio already, I can see recommending it now, whereas before I couldn't. Before I had hands on it, I wouldn't have even recommended it. Now that I had hands on it, I was like, oh, it can actually do a lot of really cool things.
Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you, at the Moog house, when I went there, it was a night that Bassek was performing, and he murdered it. Like, I mean, there was Rodent was there, a few people performed, and Bassek had such a basic setup.
Well, he always kills it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's like did you know what the only voices is? He had the DFAM and he had braids, and it sounded like a freaking drumline orchestra of some sort. Yeah. Like, it was incredible. Like, I literally found myself yelling, "Woo!" like down the crowd, because just you know what I mean, when you catch yourself enjoying it, and I'm giving people pounds next to me, like, oh my God, you know.
Couple of things with Basic, if people haven't seen, and this really was like a Jesus Christ, I need to go away and work harder. This video of Basic performing with the noise engineering Manis Tiritas, and that is the only voice. A smidgen of reverb from Erica Stimp's Pico DSP, and then the voltage block and the varigate, and he is getting like you said, like a whole drum line out of the thing through some crazy distortion. Really cool. But a couple of things with the DFAM. Yeah, I was the same. I wasn't totally convinced, but I'm well aware of that situation where you play it and you're just like, right, no, I get this thing. You need to kind of have it in your hands. And then one quick thing, Alex, you said spang in the middle of your drum word. You need a T-shirt that says kick, snare, spang, hat.
Spang. Spang. That's sort of like
an amazing
FM. There is a sort of moment where on the DFAM you can get this sort of like kind of sort of sound. Which
fine.
if it's just a single hit, it becomes a snare. You're just like, oh yeah, I can bug out to that. Yeah, basic is. I watched that Pocket Operator video as well, just as a slight diversion.
Oh my goodness!
Someone linked that on Twitter, which unlisted video.
Did you get to the Pocket Operator or to the Teenage Engineering?
I did not get to try them. No, I did not.
I heard rumors. Like, I don't want to. I kind of maybe I should just not speak on that, but I'll say this: I heard that they were doing some weird stuff, and I was all for it because I love those guys. I love Teenage Engineering to
sexy stuff.
Every time I've met them,
the fact that you said that we know that they were in like a truck or a van outside the venue, and then you said that they were doing some weird stuff. This takes it down a way crazy road.
Yo, man, like. The conversations that were being held on the floor about what was going off the floor was genius on their part. The less genius part may have been what else may have been going on, but I don't want to get into that. Let's just say California is a strange place.
Just one,
I love it.
One
as long as we're talking about
one thing, sorry, just to round off the DFAM. We'll get to promoting each other's stuff towards the end, links and stuff. But Alex, you did do a Patreon bonus post that I enjoyed.
I did.
Our thoughts on building a DFAM. Now, I won't show the whole thing, but quickly.
Don't zoom down because there's a URL that probably actually no, it won't be visible, but that's fine.
No,
yeah. Well, I've been trying to like suss it out because I think just from my own understanding, I've like. For me, it was just schooling me on the most basic of synth lessons, which is just use VCAs in your patch to modulate modulators. That's like, we can all learn a lesson because I just keep playing with that thing and shaking my head and being like, this thing is just ridiculous. And it literally is that idea of using a sequencer, stepping of a sequencer to control the sending of 3 VCAs, which, so my sort of lesson, what I was saying to Patreon people is like, just look at this. This is a very simple concept, but yeah, it makes something that's very expressive and on a per step basis, there's so much to squeeze out of that one patch. So I was like, mate, I really need more VCAs. There's a reason why you can never have too many VCAs. It's just stick those in the path and modulate your modulators. Like, just do it because like I say, I've said it like 5 times now, but it's such a simple trick, but it really does unlock possibilities. I think there's more to it, and that module, the DFAM is a perfect. It's really great sounding oscillator. It's really great sounding FM. There's hard sync, and it just is a really nice collection of elements that all clearly work so well together, because it's not just that it does these things, it does also sound frigging incredible when it's doing them. It's just got a great tone. But I think there's a good lesson to be learned from just being schooled from a master like Steve Dunnington, who's like, well, you obviously kind of don't know how he even thought it up. And I still feel like there's voodoo that is happening that isn't in that patch, that thing.
That's one of the things that it can't be underrated, is just the fact of voicing. Like, I think people, just because something has a similar oscillator, filter, envelope, VCA setup, doesn't mean that they all sound the same. Like, voicing it, when something's being designed and voiced, I mean, it can just be the make or break moment. So I'm sure Chris knows more about this than any of us combined. Don't nod your head. You're supposed to be humble with that.
I just work with people like Tom Oberheim. He said, yeah, he would design a circuit, but at the end, he would just have to put aside the scope and everything and just use his ear to decide how much to overdrive the filter, things like that.
Yeah, it just, to me, that is a perfect example of wow, like the voicing just make or break a unit and that thing. Cause I was so ready to just be like, man, Moog is just resting on its laurels. It's bull crap. I'm not interested, because to be quite frank, I like a lot of what Studio Electronics has been doing as far as when they do like the 5089 and they get like kind of like a Moog sound out of their stuff. To my ears, that stuff has gotten me super excited, and I'm like, wow, this is that sound that I want. And the Moog stuff was like, yeah, it's cool, but it didn't freak me out in the same way. But then when I start hearing these things, and I'm like, okay, they're doing some interesting stuff now that's got me happy,
Since we're talking so much about drum sounds, I'm curious to hear your other takes on the WMD fracture, because I was kind of like going through granular synthesis OD at the show, like, oh yeah, here's another granular voice, here's another granular voice. And the fracture was like an application of granular. I went, now this is cool. This I want to play with.
I didn't see that.
I didn't see it either.
I didn't see it either.
That's what I hate about it. I hate that you miss so many things because there's so many things to see.
Well, it looks like I wasn't there and saw more of this than you guys that were, other than Chris. It looks like just a different voicing and development from what was
Chimera.
the previous
the WMD Chimera.
Laid out the
Chimera. The Chimera.
Chimera,
Yeah.
that's it.
That hat module, that sounded amazing in some clips I heard as well.
Yeah, more kind of
this one's
cymbal,
all
metallic
based on
percussion.
damped or resonant sounds like hand claps, ping pong balls, sticks, and things like that. Where you do anywhere from a single sound to a cluster of sounds, spread them in time, spread them in pitch, spread them in different sounds or similar sounds. It's like taking all those granular set their particle ideas and say, now let's make a drum voice out of it. And I really enjoyed it. It was nice and versatile. And as you see, lots of CV on it.
It's nice to see those kind of timing-based features, spreading things out of time, because as anyone that's kind of produced like house music or certainly hip-hop and more wonky forms of boom bap and like sloppy grooves and things like that, putting the clap slightly before the snare drum is half of the feel for a hell of a lot of electronic genres. So to be able to say this trigger on the module is going to trigger 3 sounds, but they're all kind of spread out a little bit and they're going to kind of flap.
That's gorgeous. I love it.
It's such an important thing that, I mean, you've got to be able to kind of condition your gates and stuff as well for that. You need to be able to give it a signal that's maybe slightly early, so it's slightly before a beat or slightly late. And that's another topic. But
with this, you can randomize it so it's not the same hit on every beat. It changes a little bit of the timing and arrangement in between the sounds.
Yeah. I know the Mutant clap from Hex Inverter is 3 ramp wave, completely linear decay envelopes on the noise, but they're all like kind of slightly fanned out.
Yeah.
So they all trigger almost like a quick comb at the top. And that's that kind of spread electronic noise clap thing. So when we're patching up our own and we just go noise, VCA, envelope into the VCA, it's not quite the whole picture.
And that's that voicing, man. That's, you know, that gets back to how these guys are designing proper voicing. Like they may have all the same parts, but it's the time and effort spent on engineering proper voicing, you know?
But I haven't seen anything with this yet. It seems to have reverb on it, which caught my attention straight away. Stereo out, accent input, which is nice. CV over everything. Yeah, I guess hard to discuss if people missed it and I haven't seen it.
I thought it'd be a natural lead-in, but I blew it. So there. Corey? Hand off to Corey. Let him talk about beats, man.
Let Corey talk about beats, and he missed one of the biggest beats of the
Hey, I'm just the old guy. It must not have been cool if only I saw it.
No, actually, my interest is peaked. I'm like looking at it like, wow, really?
You and me both, man.
Yeah,
I knew after the show, Corey and I are going to have a long conversation like, yo, how do we miss that?
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm just reading through the website. Originally inspired by audience applause, hip-hop samples, drum machine. It's a multi-particle percussion synth. Yeah. Beer cans, opening a beer can, ping pong balls, claps, snaps.
That sounds right up my alley.
And they're adding more samples to it.
Yeah. You just ruined my day now that I missed that.
Yeah. Oh, and real quick, as Mylar was over here talking about the different sequencer lanes controlling drum machines, I've been doing patches with the Mini Brute 2 S back here, right? And right now it's all taken apart because I've been doing different things. But anyway, so there's 3 lanes on that sequencer, and I've been doing just that. Like you can actually set velocity and a mod, so you can set different lanes on that thing. And I've been kind of doing the same thing. But yeah, I found myself when I got back from NAMM kind of like, okay, well, how can I do that? Because I thought the DFAM had the same drum architecture as some of the other drum modules that I have. But when you play with it, it's different. You know, it just the way that it reacts is different. So yeah, if you look in the lower right corner there of that picture, that's where the very lower right box is where the gate and the 3 sequencer lanes are for the Mini Brute 2S. And so I've been programming different things because some of the sound designers over at Arturia are pretty awesome. And they always challenge each other as far as like, okay, well, one of the patches that I think it was Victor did on the Matrix Brute was he turned the Matrix Brute into a full like drum and bass machine. Like it was kick, snare, and hi-hat all in one patch. And so like I do that on every patch now just to be like, I'm gonna show him. You know? But yeah, man, that DFAM, just the voicing of it just sounded so good with the way that it reacted with those different lanes, man. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
It's a different groove and feel as well. Like, you know, we can all layer up the same patterns with a kick, snare, and a hat, but when one voice is being ragged around between all 3, it's a different feel entirely.
Yeah. It's kind of like how when you're doing a mix and you throw everything through the same bus chain and you compress it all together and everything is kind of like in this same space. It's different, but it's kind of similar to that in that like everything is now in that similar space, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it works really well. What about
you also?
Go on, Alex.
I was going to say you also, because you've just got one voice, you don't have any issues with phase, and you're not trying to muddy the sort of sound field up. You've just got one really pure waveform just blasting through the speakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another nice trick, thinking of running different sequences. If you've got, for any style of music, a situation where you've got 2 potential sequences, say song 1, song 2, or 2 parts of the song, and you've got your filter vault per octave tracking the same as your oscillator. A cool trick I've been playing around with a lot lately is to have sequence A on the oscillator and the filter, quite a resonant filter, but then move the sequence that the filter's playing over to sequence B while oscillator is still playing sequence A, and then eventually let the oscillator catch up to the next sequence. So to use that filter as the kind of stepping stone between 2 parts. And if the filter's resonant enough, you will hear the filter tap changing. If it's not that resonant, you may be too subtle. But yeah, definitely the multi-sequencer kind of route for me is where my head's at. What about you, Corey? Kind of standout product? Has it been something that we've mentioned or anything else?
Qubit had some cool stuff. What is it? They had a voice that's called a string or something like that. I can't remember the voice. I think it's called a string. And then Nebulate 2. That was cool to see Nebulate 2. I think
the Scanned.
I can't remember.
They had something.
Yeah, the Scan or something like that. Right?
Scanned. That was it.
Yeah, that was dope. It sounded pretty good. And I actually still have to put up that video. I had a good conversation with him while he was doing the demo. But yeah, I kind of dug that stuff. Let's see. What else was there? I mean, you know what? It's outside of what really piqued my interest. I think what was my favorite out of the whole show is not Modular. It was the Electron Digitone.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like it. Like a really lot. You know,
really lot.
Yeah. I was very surprised that I love the way they kind of implemented it. It's 4 operators. Where I guess, older ones were like 6 or 8 operators or whatever. But I dig some of the little tricks that they did and how they put knobs to certain features of an FM synth. You know what I mean? And then you add that with their filter and their effects like the delay and the reverb. And I mean, it's a gorgeous sounding instrument, man. I mean, and I don't think I could say enough about it, but one of the things I really love about it is how they took the operators, the 4 operators, right? And it's A, B, C, and D. So they have this X, Y knob deal. So they split the A and B operators onto X and the C and D operators onto Y. So then you can kind of turn the knobs and it's almost like a blending, a smooth morphing of the operators. Yeah. And that's not even the fact that there's 8 different configurations and stuff for
yeah, so that's the main kind of sim screen. It is a 4 operator FM engine, but it's 2 copies of the B operator.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, there's an X and a Y point for the signal. So you can see the bottom right of the screen there is effectively a crossfader between two taps of the 4 operators. And you can route the LFO to it. You can route an envelope to it. You can make the LFOs be stepped random that can trigger in time, or be a one-shot decay envelope. Really cool.
It is.
I was really kind of fortunate with, and I did mention it in one of the kind of audio video things I chucked up. Scanner Robin Rimbaud was asked to kind of what's his knowledge of FM synthesis, and then he passed me on to Electron as part of that conversation. So I made some patches for it, and it is really cool.
Yeah. I will say that thing. So the Digitact I wasn't sold on. The Digitact I was like, it's cool, but it. So I'm normally all over samplers, but for me it didn't get me super hype. Corey loves it, you know, and to me I'm like I kind of just want. I used to have a rhythm, and I sold it because of certain aspects of it that I didn't like, and most of those things have been corrected in the rhythm MK2. And now I'm like, yeah, I just want a rhythm MK2. But as soon as I laid hands on that Digitone, I was like, ooh, this is musical. Like that's the first word that came to my mind. Like it's just instantly musical. Sounds good. You know, again, I was with Glenn that day, formerly of Arteria, and we were kind of talking about it because he's a fan of FM synthesis as a whole. So we talk about that stuff a lot. And he was like, you know, it's 4 operator, and I kind of wanted to see more operators, but as soon as I started playing with it, I was like, wow, this thing really
you don't miss anything. That's the thing. It doesn't sound like there's anything missing.
Yeah, it's more than what it seems like. It has a more tonal variety than what you would expect. And again, the fact that you can process gear through it, it's just it's a cool little unit, man. I want one. I honestly do.
The back end of it sounds really good as well. The saturation on the VCA side, on the kind of amp page, the filter, the envelopes are nicely snappy. Delay effects, chorus. We were kind of told when designing patches for the factory content, as always, and you mentioned this for making samples, Ken, although it might sound amazing, don't smother in it effects. Like effects 20% wet at the most. That's not what you're there to do. You know, do that in your own time kind of thing. And you can get some really cool wet affected sounding things. And that XY blend that you mentioned, Corey, that makes it feel like 2 sounds. You can just have a free running small LFO, just kind of pulling in and out. And you can go from this high FM ratio bell that feels like it's 3 octaves higher than the bass, and it can just shove and pull in between. Or really, really impressive. I struggle to, I like to try and break stuff if I'm testing it, which is the point of testing. You know, how fast can I modulate something? How slow can I make it go? How low, how high? What can I push it? How can I bend it with modulation? And I struggled to find a bad sound.
I couldn't make a bad sound on it. I was just kind of messing around with it for a long time. Everything I did, every knob I turned, I loved it. It was just that good. And to have, you know, the thing that I noticed about that, I think that stood out, one, is it sounds good, and they implemented the whole FM synthesis in an interesting way, a very electron way. It's a very musical instrument, but to think about it, to have this FM synth in such a small package, whereas, you know, most people run around trying to get, you know, DX7s, and that's a huge joint. Right? So see what I'm saying? Right? And where now you have it in a small package and it just sounds incredible. And to be able to process things into it, it's just good.
One thing I am with it. Definitely not is a kind of, and I have friends that consistently amaze me with this stuff, is a kind of electron power user that just flies through that sequencer. I had to feel my way around a little bit. I'm not that familiar with electron products. Had a rhythm for a little while on loan from a friend. I didn't end up buying one in the end. So under the hands of, well, Cenk Data Line or someone that will fly around that sequencer faster than I will, well, even without, as a sound device, which I'd say is where my strength lies, it's great. As a whole package, even better. It did make me interested in the Digitact.
Yeah, I mean, to have an FM synth with that sequencer, I mean, to be able to parameter lock You know what I mean, and all that stuff. That's pretty incredible. I don't know if people realize that, and I'll let you know, I am a bit of a fanboy of Electron as of late. But I mean, I don't know if people realize the enormity of what the Digitone is and what it can do and what it sounds like, really.
The big thing for me with newer FM stuff, because I actually, again, like I'm so open with, you know, eating my own words. When the Yamaha Reface series came out, I was like, what is this crap? Like, I was not happy at all. Then I went and played the CP and I played the DX, and I love them both. Like, they're actually really cool. And the cool thing about the Reface DX is that, so unlike the Yamaha DX7, you know, the DX7, like when you make changes on it, it's like you have to re-trigger to do it because the processors were old, and you know, that's how it was. So, but these new ones, man, when you start tweaking FM in real time and you have a good FM engine to tweak in real time, it is really fun, especially when you have good control over it. Like, FM is not something that you just want to tweak, you know, just willy-nilly. Like, you want to have like ratios that you can control and that sort of thing. And when you start controlling ratios and you can do it in real time, oh man, it's so much easier to program and so much more interesting than how it used to be. You know, like DX7 was notoriously hard to program because a lot of it was you had to change and then re-trigger, change, re-trigger, change, re-trigger. And most people didn't have a solid grasp on it. But now with these newer synths, you can be sweeping ratios and be like, oh, okay, there's the harmonic I was looking for, and kind of, okay, and let me apply this envelope in this certain way. And you can do it all in real time in a quick way that's intuitive, and it makes all the difference in the world. I predict that we will see a resurgence of FM the same way that we saw a resurgence of analog. It's going to happen.
I believe it.
Great. Buy your DX7s now, kids.
They're already going up in price.
I got mine.
They used to be
like
like $70, and now they're already way up there in price.
Yeah.
That's the thing, though. I got to tell you, I may have a hankering for a DX7, but now that the Digitone is around, I'm kind of like, I'd like to have it in a smaller space, to have that film in a smaller space, because I got no more room for another synth around here.
I love the XY aspect of it, though, because, like the 4-operator thing, it's like, okay, well, the Reface DX does 4-operator as well. And it's like, why are we not seeing more operators like the DX7 had, this, that, and the third? But it's the fact that they kind of did something different with that XY aspect is really cool.
Yep.
Well, also it's got more waveforms. The DX7 is only sine wave, so, you're already halfway there.
Route. Yeah. So instead of buying a whack ass DX7, you could go get yourself a CD. Go get yourself a Casio, kids. What's up? Face distortion.
You need that vintage noise. You need that vintage quantization noise with the note dies away.
Well, see, it's just outside the Casio CZ1. That doesn't get enough credit. Dude, the Casio was dope. Like, that thing's cool. Because the DX thing is phase modulation. It's not frequency modulation. And it could do that at varying pitches between its operators, hence the huge range of sounds. The phase distortion thing in the CZs, they were all locked at the same pitch. So it's a very kind of different sound.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why every year I go to, so let me just give you a really quick pick of the fail of NAMM for me. Look, I give 0 Fs. I walk through NAMM, and every time I walk in, Casio had a booth at the very front, right? And every time I walked past them, they had somebody that was jamming hard. They were doing this face.
It's true.
Like, hard. They were playing this new Casio hard as hell. And I was like, man, he's really getting that. Let me stop and listen. And I was like, yeah, it sounds like Casio. Let me keep walking. Like, horrible. Every time. And I felt so bad because, again, I can be, I can point out flaws all day long, but I'm not a snob when it comes to stuff. Price point doesn't matter to me. I want Casio to win, but man, are they not winning. Like, it sounded like old school GM MIDI to me, and I was just
that's what Casio does every year, right? They're like,
Casio has like this pedigree of things that they could draw from and make interesting products from, but for some reason they're morons, like, and don't do it. And
they keep releasing General MIDI keyboards like it's the latest greatest thing.
We were talking on the floor. We were cracking jokes because they released like a press photo that was all sleek and sexy like Electron and everybody else does, where all you see is like the bottom corner of the key bed, and then everything else is kind of purple and darkened, and you don't see the rest. So you're like, ooh, what is that? But the problem that they did in that photo is they left the General MIDI silk screen underneath the keys. So you're like, well, I know it's garbage.
One like, ooh, it's 1979.
Right? It's like, oh my god, welcome to the new age.
One interesting thing with the Casios that is strange, you can pick two waveforms on, at least on the CZ1. Each CZ synth has slightly different feature sets, but instead of blending like 1 and 2 on that image where it's a saw and a square, it will play one then the other, so it becomes a 2-cycle waveform. So you could have a square that is then one of those weird resonant waves from the end, and it is one then the other, that it just kind of crowbars them next to each other. It doesn't blend or mix them in any way. So each cycle of your oscillator could be kind of stepping between 2 different waves, and that in itself is an interesting thing you don't see much of. But again, just not really implemented anywhere else. I've chucked it out to the chat room. Anyone in the chat, feel free to keep mentioning stuff for products to bring up.
Hey Ben, can I ask you about a product that wasn't really there but you have? So
yeah, the red one.
No, no, that's actually not what I was going to ask.
Someone did ask about that, so we can chat about that as well. But
we'll talk about that in a second. But what I wanted to talk, while we're talking FM, I want to talk E370 and Paul's Big Beauty. That thing has me like, I so don't have the money for it, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I bet you I could wrestle Paul to the ground. Well, maybe not. He's bigger than me. But man, that thing, have you used it in FM mode and played with that?
Yeah, so FM mode is each oscillator can be a 2-operator FM. So a single carrier, single modulator. It's digital. There's none of that motivation sapping pitch drift that you get with, say, exponential analog FM that starts to sound good and then the depth goes too high and the pitch is rising and then you're so pissed off you turn the case off. Or at least that's where I get with analog FM.
I'm right there.
Great for percussion, not so great for melodic or playing along with anything else kind of stuff. But yeah, it will do 2-op FM, which sounds great. You can see that in the E352 video I did. I mean, sonically that's the same, but you get that 4 times over. And I do have a video coming this week where I've then changed in terms of the patching 4 2-operator FM modes to get like a weird 8-operator thing. Not quite true 8-operator. Well, it is 8 operators, but the routing's weird because 1 2-operator pair will be modulated by the actual FM input, which is the 2-operator pair from below it that's being modulated by the 2-operator pair below it. So it's kind of a weird routing. And it's good. It tracks really well. The linear, there's 3 different depths of linear through 0 FM, which is great, really musical. Exponential FM does what you'd expect. The pitch does start to drift, as with most exponential FM. But yeah, really good.
That thing really has me like, man, I'm like, I wish I hadn't just moved because that sapped my bank account in a serious way. So I have to wait until I recoup from that. But
the E370 is something that you can warrant selling things for. I think I've changed.
Shush, man, you're gonna get me in trouble. You get me so much trouble.
But Ken's already sworn his next born for the radical.
My next 3.
Same prices
that much, man. Quantity just drives the price down.
Ken, March 1st is the cutoff for the 370, man.
Oh, I know. I wonder if he'll take like blood and semen.
That's close enough to Texas
I
cuisine.
don't know if I've ever heard that sentence before.
Is this what happened in the teenage engineering van?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple of things I just wanted to mention. So I did a noise engineering video, and I really want people to watch to the very end, because those guys gave me, or excuse me, guy and lady gave me such a hard time getting interviews with them previously that this time I kind of trolled them a bit while I did my video. So make sure you watch that to the end.
That's funny.
But on top of that, I would say the 3340 oscillator, that chip has been reissued, and now we're going to start seeing it in more modules. This is a tie-in here, Ben, so be prepared. Okay, so Vintage Synth Lab has their
dual Vintage Synth Lab.
Yeah, and they have their dual oscillator that uses that. And what's really interesting about what they're doing is they didn't have it quite ready for the show, but they're talking about, instead of doing, they originally had it set up for cross mod, which is the Neutron is coming from Behringer, which has the same chip in it, which will have cross mod. But the thing that they're talking about doing is they're going to do through zero FM with it, which has me very excited about that module.
I went and saw that as well. It sounded amazing.
You can thank me for that, because I beat them up mercilessly Thursday morning about it. I said, if you're going to do with them, you have to do through zero. And they said, we can do it. It's going to take some extra parts, but we can do it on the board. And I talked to everyone else is doing 3340 VCOs at the show. Are you doing through zero? No, that takes extra parts. Are you doing through zero? No, that takes extra parts. But these guys said, yeah, we can do that. We'll do it on the next row of the board.
Their filter, the VCF 74, sounds great. So I have high hopes for this.
It sounded wicked, and it's got lots of interesting kind of soft sync. Or is it? I'm terrible with this because I only vaguely understood what was going on in that center section. But basically, the sort of synchronization systems between the two oscillators was creating some truly gnarly sounds.
Yeah, so at the minute it looks like they've both got independent linear FM, exponential FM, hard sync, and soft sync.
That thing sounded really cool, and he's. So there's some designers, when I talk to them, I can kind of tell, like, okay, we're just kind of like making things work, and, maybe not we might be smart, but we're not like brilliant. This guy's brilliant. Like, he's really got his head in the game, and I'm really interested to see, what Vintage Synth Lab does in the long term, because I can just tell, like, he's one of the guys to look out for, man. Like, really. So, and it sounded good. Again, like, we get back to like how things are set up and how things are voiced and all. Like, just every patch that he was setting up, I was like, oh, I like that. I like this. I like that.
It's funny.
I thought the same.
Hose of Cables just came in and stormed the modular world.
Oh yeah, really.
Yeah, they sent me a load.
Yeah.
He's not getting enough cables.
No.
I don't want to talk about it on the air.
No, we'll leave that.
They're my hangs of
they've certainly come and stormed them. I'm seeing them everywhere. The Behringer thing. There's a couple of things that people have asked for. Mark Zeno has asked about the Catalyst Audio Buchler 100 series stuff, the original Buchler. We'll come to that in a minute. And Barlow asked about the assimilator. We'll go on to the Neutrons. You mentioned it, so I grabbed it. It's. I knew about it before the Model D, actually, and I think it's just a good sim. I can't say I'm fond of it being red, but I'm not that bothered. It sounds great. The oscillators, huge range on the oscillators, at least on this test version. Pete and Rob, the two kind of Midas engineers that have been, you'll have seen them on DeepMind videos and things like that. They were also on that ULE UBXA rundown thing where they were asking people to put their questions to them. That's Pete and Rob. They've been great back and forth about this. There is a newer version than the one I have. They have just said I can put some content out, though. I've got 6 videos that were like my setup. It's just as easy for me to turn a camera on, and it's that fast to kind of sync audio. I've done it that many times that I might as well put a camera on if I'm going to record some audio, just in case I get permission. And I said,
smarter than I am. I always get prototypes and I'm like, I'm not going to film anything because I'm deathly afraid of it getting out to somebody.
Yeah, well, it's not. I did put it up privately on YouTube actually, and I just sent it to Pete and Rob and said, look, don't share this link, but here you go. Here's my test patches. There's a couple of things to work on as usual, but they listened and a second version came and those had been addressed. But I deliberately shot kind of off-angle, blurry shots, thinking they can use them for whatever they want. You know, I just said, here's some stuff, just some test audio. We'll use this whenever. So it's not going to be, because I know what's going to happen. I'll start putting these videos up and someone will go, but I've seen the picture of the module online. Why have you done a blurry video? And it's like, well, I filmed it months ago, not knowing what it was going to be used for. I knew it would definitely be a no if I filmed a kind of front-on, in-focus video. I wasn't sure what they wanted it for. But yeah, delay's nice. There's a little bit of kind of BBD chip whine at the longer times, which I kind of like. It reminds me of it being like other old BBD delays I've got. Are
you talking like the PT2399?
No.
Do you mean like actual BBD? Like
no, they've reissued BBD chips. There's two on the newer one. I think there's just one chip in this one, so it's a slightly longer time. It's dark, it's gritty. You can modulate the delay rate on the BBD, so it'll do really nice chorusing, kind of flanging stuff. Feedback gets out of hand if you want it to. The overdrive's really good. Unlike the Model D, which is just a couple of patch points, you know, it doesn't really massively integrate. You can sequence it from Euro, but there's not much. You can't use the Model D as an independent oscillator with individual outs. You can't go into the filter without going through the mixer, which then means you couldn't take the oscillators out elsewhere. It's very much a contained thing. This will work as standalone stuff. So I've given the filter a hammering from the modular, same with the delay. I don't know what he's pricing it at. It's slightly bigger. This is bigger than 84 HP.
It is bigger than 84, huh?
Yeah. Hang on. Oh no, maybe it's. No, I think it's 84. I thought it was just a little.
Okay, I was gonna say, because like to me, like 84 would be the max that I would want to go for just about any module. Just because of things like, well, the rack brood is actually larger than 84. But like just in general, like most things are 84 is like kind of like a standard now, you know, because it's usually what'll fit in a 19-inch rack, you know.
Yeah. Well, for me, the thing is, I got involved with Ben because I did get a message when I put some of the Model D stuff up, like, and it was a kind of, why the F are you entertaining this Behringer clone crap, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, look, which it's an argument that's there. It's not to be, I'm not going to exist. I was like, I got involved with the DeepMind 12 through whatever means I did, and I was involved from them.
Tell them the truth. You paid. Blood and semen.
And those guys, those Midas guys, they're like an hour and a half away. So it's, you know, usually when I'm off from work, it's right, I'm off this week. What's coming up? I'll pop over and catch up with those guys. This was just pencil on paper when I first saw it, and I was like, oh man, you should definitely do this. This would be really cool. And I lent those guys a case of Modular. I left the 9U Dope case full of stuff, and I was like, this is what I think's really good.
He did pay.
Yeah. So, and then I was getting, you know, emails back and forth with, oh, what's this envelope? Why have you picked this envelope over other stuff? We've been looking at this, this, and this, and they know what they're on about. Those whether those decisions go right through to Uli and the wider kind of scheme of things, I kind of don't care. I like Pete and Rob and those guys.
Great guys.
So with this, I'm not interested in any of the politics of it. Does it sound, like we've said about voicing stuff, does it sound good? Why would I want to use this oscillator over something else? Is the filter any good standalone, or is it just kind of good as a package? And I think it's a good synth. I think
I have one on the way, which I guess is the newer batch that just came. So it should be here probably within the next week or so. And I'm looking to put it through kind of similar tests of, hey, does this thing sound good in its individuality? And then how does it sound as a package, and how does it interact? So I'm really interested in it, because it's one of those things where it's easy for people to like say, oh, you know, big business is getting involved in our small business, and we don't like that, this and that, and the third. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is one of those things where people are going to see that this can be a gateway to much more people getting involved into Eurorack. I think it was Dave Spears that had talked about, he was at a talk at a modular meetup somewhere in your Hobbit area over there, where he was talking about modular, and then he asked the people in the crowd to raise their hand as to who had modular, and it was only a few people in the crowd. And
this was at the first Sound on Sound magazine Synfest. They had the kind of round table at the end, and it was, you know, there was lots of modular at the show, and he said, "Who's got modular?" And it was, you know, 5% of the audience put their hand.
Yeah, and to me, it's like you know, that's one of those things where it's like there's still, like, as much as we get oversaturated hearing about modular, the rest of the world out there is still very much looking at it like that's a lot of cables to do a simple part sound, you know.
What was interesting at that same first Synfest, though, I was part of a panel on getting started with modular for that. Kind of got all the guests in the presentation together and things. With Matthew Shaw, I should say, me and him kind of curated the thing. And people were really interested, but still at that point of, A, it's expensive, B, I don't know what it's doing, and C, as you said, I have to patch up a lot of work to get a basic synth voice. I've had keyboards since the 80s, and I got cheap analog when it was going dirt cheap in the late 80s into 90s, and no one wanted it. And I love my synths, but everyone's kind of on the edge. They were interested, but there was a lot of people that didn't have it. So I think stuff like this will bring them in. And much like a Mother 32 and, you know, other things, there's MIDI, there's headphones, it's all there. Much like the Acheria stuff, get that and expand it with a couple of little bits.
Can you rack mount it?
Yeah, it comes. Okay. Yeah, 4 screws.
That's my plan. Is I want to stick it. I have my 6U back here. I've got a System 1M up top, and I want to stick that thing down below and kind of play with that. I think that's going to be fun.
It's the main thing with it is, I guess the kind of closing comment from me on it anyway, is this sounds really raw and dirty. The oscillators drive into the filter will growl, the overdrive section in the delay is quite filthy. It is not clean or cheap or sterile.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the filter design is? Because I know what the oscillator is, but I don't know about the filter.
It's just of their design, it said. It's not like the Model D one. You can tell it's not that circuit. We don't know if is it state variable or is it yeah, it's a state variable. You've got switching to go from band, high pass, low pass. Okay. You don't get all the outputs, but you get 2 filter outputs, and it's the one that's selected on the first output and the next one down on the second.
Nice.
So you don't get all the outs, but there's a ton of patch points. There's sample and hold that's got glide that you can clock. There's things like slew limiter, 2 attenuators, just a couple of extra bit of detail. What
about the jack panel on that? How is that mounted? They're panel mounted, I think. Okay. I was wondering about how robust it would feel, because I know people were saying, "Oh, it's not panel mounted," but like in the pictures that I saw, it looked like there's like black rings on there. So I don't know.
Yeah, they're not metal washers, or not ones with the normal little kind of that you can get your nail into. They listen again, like Chris pointed out about, and you did about Acheria. They've listened. You know, when this was penciled out and their ideas, and they're like, "What's cool about modular is being able to attenuate your modulation, having slew limiters. I want separate sample and hold to the LFO. I don't want to have to not have an LFO just because I've picked the random waveform." Yeah. It's kind of all there, and it gives you loads of stuff to go at. You can key sync the LFO as well. You can clock the LFO. It'll play paraphonically over MIDI. Yeah. I love that we're living in an age where we're seeing this kind of stuff coming through at like crazy low price points. And I mean, I can remember when modular was a complete pipe dream. I mean, Corey can remember when I used to talk about it. Back in the day, I was just like, man, I want a modular so bad. And everybody was like, what are you going on about? And then finally I got my modular, and they're like, okay, he's weird. And then a couple years later it was, oh yeah, we're all going modular. Well, my other thing with it, and we'll move on to some of the stuff from the chat after this, but with working in schools and colleges, even if kind of other people don't adopt it and schools can just let someone have this. I teach music tech classes, one at a college, one at a high school. I could pitch this to a potential, now they'd probably say no because budgets are super tight, but I could at least pitch this as something we could use as course content. I have got no chance of getting any of those kids in that school to touch a synthesizer unless I just bring in my own gear. But in terms of school budgets and stuff, there's no chance of getting stuff like that. So cheap gear, whatever it sounds like, is welcome, but I don't think this sounds cheap.
The best that we had as far as teaching wise, like, you know, what was it, like 10 years ago, was the SH201, which in my opinion was horrible. I was not a fan of that Roland synth. Now, granted, the layout was fine, but the actual sound and control of that thing, like the knobs were, the resolution was terrible, and it just, to me, it sounded like butt. But now it's like it's the new golden era. It's the new golden era. All we need is a new Emax, and you know, I love the Emax. I'm waiting for dedicated samplers to come back. Like not workstations, just like give me like the raw, like.
Oh, you guys living in the past. You worship the past.
Well, no, that's just it. Is like I want to see dedicated samplers that can use the technology today that can do much more. Like we saw the Mordax GXN, which is granular synthesis module, and like there's so much more that can be done with the power of today, but you need to focus on doing it in a way that doesn't, just because you come out with a sampler keyboard does not mean you need to be a Triton. You know what I mean? Like I want to see stuff where I can have hands-on control of complex granularity and all kinds of things of that nature. You know, there's so many other synthesis methods that haven't been explored yet, but I think we're on our way. Like it's starting to take off. It's becoming the new guitar.
Going back in time to what Mark Zeno asked in the chat, did anyone check out the Catalyst Audio Beatppl 100 series stuff?
Yeah, I thought it sounded good, that stuff. It was a really nice guy, David, who's making it. I had a good chat with him, but it's quite a limited selection of modules, I believe, but I'm not familiar enough with Beatppl 100 to tell you whether they were accurate or not. And also, obviously, with the acquisition of Beatppl, you know, the new Beatppl USA, I don't know if he might have some problems.
Well, not necessarily. Well, it depends on when that Beatppl gets aggressive. But Eric Fox of Foxtone took over Beatppl. Is a very cool dude. What David did with the Catalyst Audio Beatppl 100 modules, he showed them last year, and he's gone back to the schematics for the 100 series, and he's tried to use all of the original components as best as he can, because he's really trying to recreate the original sound. The one thing he did different is the old Beatppl 100 was like 2 volts per octave, and the audio level is lower and everything else. And I pleaded with him last year to at least bring things up to Eurorack levels. So he said, yeah, this year it's all 1 volt per octave stuff. It's all Eurorack. It's like plus or minus 4 volts for the oscillators. And he has about half a dozen modules he shipped so far, and he sold out his first batch. He's about to do another batch. He's got another few modules he's going to do, including a bandpass filter and a different oscillator. But he's trying to redo the Beatppl 100 stuff, where Beatppl Americas is now in their 200E series. So I don't think they conflict directly that much.
Well, I know Mark, fire away in the chat, Mark. I'll kind of read out as we go. The stream's about 20 seconds behind what we're actually talking about, but fire away in the chat, Mark. I know Mark's just got the oscillator, the one on screen, dual sine and sawtooth. Looks deceptively simple. And I got a nice message from Mark just saying this thing is wild.
I got a question about that, because so I have in my case, I've got the dual 258J, which it's pretty old. I don't.
Is that the jerk panel, the kind of DIY?
Yeah, that's the jerk verbose Beatppl Dualas, and this one is obviously like in a much more compact shape, and but I just wonder, like, how, again, it gets back to voicing, I guess, but I wonder how different it's going to sound, and how true it'll sound to something like Beatppl.
It sounded really organic at the show. It had a real nice sound to it. And one of the secrets is that even the old Beatppl oscillators were still linear FM on the inside. I talked to David about the design. Inside, the voltage is 0 to 12 volts. There's no negative. So he's able to keep things in a fairly high range where he's not having too much of a through zero problem, so they don't get the detuning that Ben was talking about. Then on the output, he brings down to being bipolar. But I was really pleasantly surprised at how organic it sounded.
Yeah, because I'm really interested in that. I have a few dual oscillators, and they all sound different. They all have their own method of operation. Like depending on which module, when you start to FM them, some kind of fade away at higher frequencies in FM. Like for instance, the 258J that I have, I can't FM it with as high frequency of an oscillator, you know, the secondary oscillator at as high a frequency as I have the Pittsburgh double helix, which I love that thing. It has a little bit of bleed in it, like internal bleed, but man, I love that thing, and it can go crazy high with the FM on it.
So that's probably some DC blocking caps in the original one, because you really want to keep the waveform symmetrical to do FM, or you're going to get a pitch shift. So I'm sure Don put a DC blocking cap on those. That's going to roll off. You know, you're going to have some issues with it. And the other thing to keep in mind with these is that these old circuits are not going to track over 8 octaves. David said, you know, 2 octaves, I can do that.
Yeah, he said that to me as well.
Pushing it.
He's like, it's good when you've got, you know, a sequence where you can freely tune the notes, because you'll need to do that for it to be in tune.
Yeah. And he's even using the control voltage processor to do his tracking adjustment, what I use the AJHV scale for. So it's going to be definitely user intervention required. It's not going to be like buying a Behringer, but it had a sound. It was good.
Also, am I not right in thinking he kind of designed his own spring reverb driver as well? That he had a kind of
he didn't do the whole driver. There was 2 components that he said he had to replace and couldn't use the original Buchla. One was on his low pass gate. The original Buchla actually had an incandescent light bulb and a photocell. And he said that was just too slow, and he went to a Vactrol for that. And then he said on the Buchla spring reverb, those transformers were $200 each.
Good Lord.
Wow.
So he redesigned the driver, as you say, for that, just to get around the transformer, but he's still using a transformer, best as I recall.
That thing is an interesting point you mentioned, tracking over 8 octaves. Man, I hate that as a thing. When people are like, yeah, but this only tracks 5 octaves. It's like, well, the grand piano's 8 octaves. How many sequences are you playing that are 8 octaves long, like top key to bottom key on a grand piano?
A mini mode does not have a 5-octave keyboard. Point any mini mode solo you like, and did not go over 3 octaves.
Yeah.
Most riffs, I'd say, will probably sit in 2 octaves anyway, for the most part. And you can retune your oscillators if they don't.
Yeah.
There's ways around. I hate that kind of, yeah, but this track's perfectly over 8 octaves. It's like, I don't care. I've never.
I'm never going to do that.
Digital, you know, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, but, it does. I've never played a line that spans 8 octaves.
So I didn't get a lot of time with those. I didn't get a lot of time with those modules. Did he also have an LPG?
Yeah.
Nice.
See, I love me some LPGs, man, because they're all different. You know, they all have their own character, so it's always worth checking them out. So that's something that I'm gonna have to. Now, is he using actual Vactrols in them? And the question I have about that, because you know I'm over here in the States, so I'm not fully aware. Am I correct in thinking that you guys can't have Vactrols sold over in the UK now? Is that correct?
There are remade ones that you can, but they have is it a radioactive element, cadmium, I think, which is the issue. But there are remakes without that in, much like all these chips being remade, BBDs, them chips.
And
I just wasn't sure if you guys could do that at all or what.
Yeah, and he is using Vactrols in there. That's when I mentioned that was one of the pieces of circuitry he had to change. It was the original ones had incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah,
and he said that just didn't work for him, so he had to use Vactrols. We thought was close enough to being to the spirit.
Yeah, Mark's just said the same thing, that it wasn't actually Vactrols in the original anyway. And he's also pointed out that for the kind of West Coast stuff that this was doing, you weren't doing 8 octaves of musical pitch. Anyway, so.
And he's got like wave folders and all that in there, or what?
I'm not sure if I've seen a folder yet.
No, there's a simple shaper in the earlier oscillators, but there's not a folder yet. That's 200 series stuff.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. See, I don't have BBoy. That's just outside my price range at the moment. Mainly because I'm not a massive drug dealer.
Look
So
at this person surrounded by all this gear. Oh, that's outside my budget.
well,
right.
hopefully it won't be. I'm working on some deals that hopefully I can make that happen. But yes, I'm working
for anyone in Europe that can get to EMS in Stockholm, there is a BBoy 100 series there. It's a studio that's kind of ran by the Swedish government for the Swedish people, but international artists go in. You have to effectively write a kind of mini uni paper to say why you should be allowed to go in. Why do you want to come to our studio for a week? That could be I'm working on an EP, I'm documenting stuff about synths, I'm doing whatever. And I've had a few friends and artists, Matthew Shaw went over, Radic, Rudnicki, I know Scanner's been, Robin Rimbaud, go spend a week in there as like a, stay in a local hotel, and you're in studio, you're in the BBoy room today. That's what you've booked. And they've got a working 100 series unit in there. Lots of Surge, the 200 series BBoy as well. Anyone in Europe that can get to AMS and find a reason to kind of submit a paper, I highly recommend you do. The pictures and stuff I've seen of that look amazing. I'm trying to find time to find an excuse to go.
So slightly off topic here. He was mentioning incandescent light bulbs and then Vactrols, and it kind of got me thinking about one other thing. Did any of you guys get to check out any of the NewTube stuff? So Vox used NewTube, which Vox is owned, I think, by Korg now. And Ibanez also used NewTube for the NewTube Screamer. And for the people that don't know, NewTube is it's basically a vacuum tube that is super, super small and can use low voltages, but supposedly will get the similar kind of harmonic distortions and that sort of thing. But I was just wondering if any of you guys got to demo any of that stuff or mess with it, because I actually searched it out. I did get to play with a little Vox amp through guitar, but not much deeper than that. But I really wanted to play with more of the NewTube stuff because it's interesting technology that I'm skeptical but very interested in.
Yeah, you can kind of see the tube there in the NewTube Screamer pedal. I mean, low voltage tubes. I've not had an experience of any of this, but low voltage tubes are in certainly some of the modules that we use. Sonic stuff, Erica Sims, Trogotronic. And there's ways of making that. Some of that stuff sounds great. Now, it's not obviously not the same experience as running mains voltage into a tube amp at all. But
supposedly this is the way that the NewTubes are being utilized, and what it can do is supposedly like drastically different. And I think it was 2 years ago that they unveiled it at NAMM. So it's kind of, we're just now seeing these products come to light that are using that tech. But I mean, I had heard a lot of, commotion about how, this stuff actually sounds good. Now, when I talked to some of the designers that I know, they had all mentioned that it's actually pretty pricey for them to get what they needed to work on them. I can't really get too much into detail on that, but I'm just really curious as to how that stuff was sounding. I didn't see the price point of like the Tube Screamer NewTube version, and I really didn't even see the price point of the Vox stuff, but I imagine it can't be that crazy high. So I may want to do that because I run my Rhodes through a Vox amp. And if I can get something low wattage that's, kind of small and compact and still sounds good, I'm all for it.
Well, the pedal, the new Tube Screamer with a new tube in it is $239 in the UK. Now, I think other Tube Screamers are certainly less than 200 in terms of drives. I wonder if it has that same mid hump, because the Tube Screamer is effectively just top end and bottom end roll off in terms of guitar tone, which is, it puts you right in that point where you want to be for a solo or something in the band. Not so great for synths because it gives so much other content. There's no real bass on a guitar. You can roll off from 80 hertz and not really hear it. There's no real top end in a distorted guitar either. Treble and presence is like upper mid boost as opposed to actually treble. You can roll off quite a lot high and it not actually be there anyway. So I wonder if this is any better for synths where you do have a lot of low end potentially. But I don't know.
It just looked interesting to me. It's not, like I said, I'm a little bit skeptical, but I'm interested to see what happens and interested in hearing what it can do, because maybe it's not, you know, the new 12AX7 or whatever, but maybe it's, you know, I'm not expecting it to be a Mullard, you know, but maybe it's something cool in its own right. Who knows?
Well, it might end up in modules if it becomes widely enough accepted and used and cheap enough. You know, front end drive for a filter or something. I don't know. I kind of had my eye on it, and then I don't really. It keeps popping up, and I don't ever see enough for it to then hold my attention and look any further. It just keeps glimpsing into my kind of peripheral vision every now and then. One thing you've mentioned, Ken, that someone asked for, and we'll look to start wrapping up shortly. So anyone in the chat that wants to kind of ask us any specific questions, do it now. The assimilator from Rossum.
Gimme.
Ditto what he said.
Did you go see? I take it you went and saw Dave and Marco.
Yeah, I got a great video up with them. So if anybody wants to go check out youtube.com/flux with it, you can go check it out. I got a great video on there of him. But I love talking to Dave. He's one of the designers that I'm a legit fanboy of, because he knows his stuff so well, and he's brilliant. Like, I can't say a bad word about Dave Rossum. Like, he's just brilliant.
Yeah,
He is.
I think people are missing about the assimilators is not just a very versatile 8-voice sample playback, but the fact that he's doing FM with samples.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can have one sample frequency modulated another sample, and you get as you bring the modulation index in and out, you get these really wild convolved sounds I used to get out of Sound Hack, and I think there's a lot to explore in there.
What he's saying is that it's basically a Casio CZ.
It will phase distort.
No, it really did. In the demos he was showcasing it, and I kind of made sure to explain in the video, look, this is not an SP1200 in modular form, because so many people kept bringing that up.
Yeah, that's what people think.
This is
That's
very
not
much
the bad way to approach that.
it's very much a new take on using samples with FM, and just it is really cool.
Mhm.
He did that at an earlier version at Super Booth back at the end of April last year, where he was saying, "Oh, here's a trumpet sound, burr, here's a piano sound, ding," kind of thing. And I was like, you know, I don't need to hear a single note. You know?
That's right.
That was my honest first thought, that you're not going to win over a modular crowd going, "Here's a trumpet holding a C burr, for 5 seconds," until he did just that and said, "Listen, what happens when I route the output of this to modulate the phase at audio rate of the other one," and then it was just like, just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
It's like you said, Chris. It's like the standalone Sound Hack program when you phase convolute two sounds against.
Exactly. I used to do it all the time. I used to convolve two sounds together. I mean, it took minutes to crunch out one 10-second thing, but it was a cool sound.
You can still get the Sound Hack software for free, and it doesn't take minutes anymore, but it's still an offline process.
And that's the thing about a lot of what Dave is doing now is he's taking ideas that previously he just did not have the computational power to do in real time, and now he's doing it. Like the Morpheus filter, he had that filter previously, but it wasn't in real time, all the parameters, and now it is, because he has that access to that kind of power. And it's brilliant to see that the way that his mind works is very much progressing. Like he's not stuck in the past with what he's doing. You know, it's okay. Well, here's what I did in the past, but here's how I can really move it forward in an interesting way. And that's why I'm like I can meet famous hip hop producers all day long, rappers, and I don't get giddy. But when I'm talking to Dave, I get legitimately starstruck and giddy, because the way he does things, he's a freaking genius. I love it.
I love that he is one of the pioneers of instruments that we all love, but that he's all about moving forward. You know what I mean? Like, I love that. I love that he looks at the assimilator as something new, and that he wants to make sure people know this. Yeah, it's a sampler, but it's not like just some new SP1200. You know what I mean? Even though he has a variable sample rate and stuff like that on there, right? And it's just a good instrument, and modulating one sample with another that brings up all sorts of things that it's a playground. It's endless capabilities with that thing.
Thinking of sample rate, Corey, your mic, it's as if you've been dropping from like 44.1 right
So on the
you're really super, you're like 8-bit at this point nearly.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
It sounds really great.
It is like you've just slowly been dropping your sample rate on the machine.
This is on the assimilator.
This is how serious I am about making my point about that roster.
Yeah, you can modulate the aliasing on the assimilator, and that's what he's doing right now. He's modulating his sample rate. He's doing that for us. He's a man about the people.
Yeah, I go to great lengths.
Sorry, I forgot the name, but you've mentioned it, Ken. Thinking of the assimilator, someone did just pop up and say, go watch Ken's video, and that's great. I recommend doing so as well. The assimilator, it's here to test in a rack, just slightly probably out of shot here. It really is very, very good. I can't quite decipher Dave's kind of prototype screens as well as Dave clearly can, but having used their other modules, I'm sure it will be super.
One gripe I have about some of his modules, and this is my own personal gripe. I have the Evolution right here. I took it out because I'm working on the Jovian synth Wuno VCF prototype, so I took this out to mess with that. But the only thing that I wish he would do is make his modules wider for everything that they do. Because to me, I want to be able to fit my finger in between knobs, and I can't do that on a lot of his modules. So that's my
Evolution was the most cramped, wasn't it, by the looks of it?
Yeah, it's just, to me, especially for a filter, I want to be able to like grab it in a musical way and play it.
Yeah, and get the mouth going. You want to stand and go, wow, wow, wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, I get filter mouth all the time, and I get that Casio face, where, except it sounds way better. But which, by the way, the guys that were playing played great. It was just the sound. But no, like, that's the only gripe that I have is I would like a little bit more spacious. And I realize what he's doing. Like, everybody's in this thing where they're like, we want to compact everything so everything can fit in an 84 HP case or whatever. But I would kind of rather it be spread just a hair more.
I'll tell you a funny story, Ken. I mean, that's why I'm really into having a controller keyboard with lots of sliders and knobs on it. I then create voltages for and patch to the modules, because I'll do that while I'm playing. I did that in one of my videos. Someone says, why don't you just grab the knob?
It's like, well, let me tell you why. Do you really want to know the answer? Yeah, I totally agree. And I do that sometimes as well, where I'll map things out and then I'll send a voltage to it, but it's not the same as, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, give me a little bit of space, just a little bit more.
Well, we're a good kind of 2 hours in here, so let's look to wrap up. But Sunil has just said in the comments, did anyone speak to Jacob Brashears? He wasn't exhibiting, but he was there. I'm not sure who that is.
He's the kid who redesigned the OB6 or whatever, you know, the OBX.
Is that Jacob?
Yes, he was there. I didn't see him. I saw that Nick at Sonic State had shared a picture of him. I did meet that kid when he was exhibiting. I went and saw him and was like, I first met his mum, and then she was like, I remember his mum saying how it's like, you know, and it's all the work of my son, the genius behind it all. I'm like, right, because I was like, how old's your son? This literally 16-year-old boy walks onto the stand. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, thereby hangs the tail. But
is that what you're saying?
He was there just walking around, but he wasn't exhibiting.
Okay, yeah. Very cool.
I don't know. I've heard some things about what he's up to. Well, I don't think I'm allowed to pass them forward. I don't actually know. So, but he's up to something. Sounds good.
I'm sure someone will snap him up. Like, you know, the kind of Wonder Kid thing. Someone is going to realize the potential of that and offer him probably a deal too good to refuse at some point.
Well, hopefully he goes through school and finishes that too. But yeah, I'm very interested in his future as well. So I think everybody's rooting for somebody that's just passionate about what they do what they love for a living. So there's that, you know.
Tom at Symphonatomy just said new drum modules. Was that the desktop drum machine? It wasn't actually drum modules at NAMM?
No, they have a quad draw module as well.
Okay.
They had a whole bunch of quad modules. The idea is if you have very good
yes, they did. I didn't realize Ben had, I rang Ben when he first messaged me about that. I rang him through Facebook audio and was like, "Are you up? Because there's a huge time difference between us. I want to talk to you about this that you messaged me." I just woke up and seen it, kind of thing. I forgot they'd taken that. I knew there was the LFO in the envelope. The Manfa was there. New
random module, but also they had the quad drum module, and Erica also had some new drum modules to go along with their drum sequencer.
Yeah, they first had the kick again at Super Booth last year, and I think they've maybe put the idea on hold or went away and worked on it for a bit, with the original 909 style buttons on the sequencer as well. Yeah, cool. Well, anything anyone wants to kind of wrap up on? I'll put links to all the guest channels, Patreon pages for those that are on it, and all websites, all that kind of thing in the description.
I'd like to bring up one thing that came up in the chat pod. There's another very cool product there. I mean, the spherical waveform oscillator and all that was cool, but SSF was showing them something they call the 0-point oscillator.
Yes.
And for me, as a person who's done a lot of stuff with digital waveforms and crossfading in between them, trying to create constant motion in the sound, this was like an analog oscillator that tried to have as much motion as a really cool morphing digital oscillator, because you had an A waveform out and a B waveform out that could be continuously moving their wave shapes. You could morph between those wave shapes. He had control over where the reverse point was and through 0FM, so he created this strange pulse width modulation sound. He had a new way of doing pulse width modulation. He just had a lot of stuff in here to create a really rich animated analog sound. And honorable mention on that is IntelliGel has a Rubicon 2 with some other new features in it, but this really struck me as this is really like pushing what you do with an analog oscillator. This excited me as well.
Yeah, I didn't spend as much time with that, but what time I did spend with it, you could hear that it was very musical. You know, he was able to get some really cool modulations out of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to messing with that some more.
Yeah, cool. Well, like I said, I'll link to everyone in the description. And very last minute for the chat window to get anything in. I've got that 8 operator E370 SynthTech video going up. It's kind of weird when you do it the way I did it. I'll make a little kind of signal diagram for it. It's got this almost acoustic instrument, like a kind of overblown wind instrument, or almost kind of electric guitar feedback-ish kind of thing. Obviously, you need a lot. The only thing with it is it's a big module, but then to support that many complex voices, you also need a lot of modulation. And as Alex was saying with the DFAM, VCA is to modulate your modulation with modulation, so it's all just way more interesting and can be far more dynamic. That takes more space up than the module itself, whether you do that with an E370 or not. But yeah, cool. All right, well, thanks everyone for coming on, and there's no questions popping up.
Thanks for having us on, man.
Yeah, no, it's good. And selfishly, for me that didn't watch much footage yet from now, I now know what I need to go watch. That's good. Right, cool. Thanks, everyone. Cheers, everyone in the chat. I will see you later.